On the occasion of the European Cultural Days, GEDA Karlsruhe and the Joint Research Center of the European Commission are guests at the ZKM, the Temple of Media Arts, one of the largest and most accurate sites of visionary future research. The house has been known for decades for its seismographically precise analyses of the present and, in a constant dialogue between science and art, gives voice to the burning issues of our time. One of the currently most important challenges for Europe and the world is to reconcile the conflicting goals of global problems. Currently, these are the goals of environmental and climate protection and the energy turnaround, combined with the safe dismantling of nuclear energy and the simultaneous expansion of the comprehensive digitalization of all areas of life. The motto of the European Cultural Days, Europa ein Versprechen, Europe a promise, swears the countries to the achievement of the goals already in the title, which should lead to a uniform change of course in the programs of the European Union. Already more than 70 years ago, the European countries went ahead with the founding fathers of the European Union in terms of understanding and dialogue, and so the constant commitment to a unified path, as well as the issues seem closer to us today than ever. With the exhibition Europa, so fern und doch so nah, we focus on the enormous challenge and thematize approaches to solving these contradictory objectives. With the help of a small selection of precise art handles, the complexity of large topics can be intensively and sustainably shaped. The exhibition concentrates on those three topics which are currently being negotiated by the individual governments in the European laboratory. The energy transition and supply in the context of increasing digitalization, the situation of natural ecosystems in the face of climate change, and the challenge and risks of activities associated with the return of nuclear energy sources. With a total of 7 exhibits, the exhibition condenses the current positions of lobbyists and interest groups in each case and, seen together, clarifies the global situation. Of these, the Joint Research Center of the European Commission is showing 5 works from its collection Art Spaces. Their common denominator is a barrel typical of radioactive material disposal, which has served as the starting point for renowned international artists' reflections and commentaries on the subject of responsible energy supply and disposal. The works of Karlsruhe-based media artist Sabine Schäfer use audiovisual experiences to open up a much larger field of tension around the topic of energy supply, its achievements and prices. In a sense, these are the core of the exhibition, around which the artist's statements of the Art Spaces collection are gathered around, either admonishingly or hopefully. The centerpiece of the exhibition is a 2-part work by Karlsruhe-based media artist and composer Sabine Schäfer. Her works are part of the collections of the ZKM and the city of Wolfsburg. The 2-part work has visual and auditory components. 16 printed glass plates are suspended in the freestanding luminous light metal object. Associated with it is a trio of music stands, which hold ready the notations of a three-part sound composition by means of large format QR codes. The image gallery presents colorful portraits of the Earth, in shades ranging from blue and yellow-orange to red and bright white, hung in double rows around the rectangular object. These are satellite images of 8 continental views and as many European Union capitals showing views at night. The base material for the city views are satellite images from the International Space Station, which were processed by scientists for this project. 4 out of 8 of the aforementioned big city views can be scanned using a smartphone or tablet and Artivive's free augmented reality app. In contrast to the light-flooded views of big cities, the less to not at all illuminated sections of the Earth reveal plan squares that refer to the more natural state of the Earth's surface and, turned away from the sun, do not shine by themselves. Where the luminosity of the cities reveals their structural pattern to us, these are shaped by bluish-looking framings in the upper and lower areas into a landscape format characteristic of the cinema image. These framings are aesthetically implied as an Earth atmosphere, but in the context of the large cities they refer to their inherent ambience, the invisible haze that has lingered over them since their creation. The decontextualized atmosphere becomes a framing, and thus a content element that can be interpreted as a prize without neither the big city nor the view of it can be had. The imaginary camera journeys show the widely ramified luminous streets of the EU capitals in their interconnectedness and fragility. The factor of time also leads these journeys into a historical thread, since the development of large cities cannot be thought of without the overcoming and structuring of space and time, also independent of day and night. Here, light seems to symbolically stand for the subjugation and colonization not only of space, but also of time, and refers to the empowerment and inflection of physical quantities and their transformation into energy, communication, and data transmission. There are no limits to the associative thoughts of neuronal connections, interconnectedness, and network formation in such a view from an outside standpoint, or, better, from an astronautical point of view. Thus, although the thought of artificial worlds germinates, which seem to form and multiply silently around the globe, as the 3 circular moons on the view of the Benelux countries suggest. Or is this already the visibility of those bubbles in which our digital world, down to the individual, is retreating? Perhaps, however, we have long since found ourselves in a suicide mission and are looking from afar at the catastrophes, infernos, and collapses that are imminent for us. In any case, the astronautical view of the Earth is a view in suspension and a view from a great distance, and only in this way does it allow us to sense the immense dimensions of global forces. Consequently, the 2 image motifs on the narrow sides of the installation finally turn the dimensions of orientation upside down. Thus, all horizons are given in portrait format so that the luminous events of the cities show themselves to a viewer in a now free-floating state only as a glittering rain of light, which can mean anything, from wars to eruptions of the earth or large-scale forest fires, the extent of which we can actually only experience through the satellite images of the media. Under this global view, Europe recedes into the distance. The reflection on its union more than 70 years ago for the purpose of solving economic and ecological tasks allows the European idea of solving global questions across countries to live on in a next larger community in the sense of a global union. The interactive astronautical large-scale installation is accompanied by a trio of music stands, facing each other and extended at different heights, reminiscent of a nuclear family. Instead of sheet music, however, each stand holds a panel on which a QR code can be seen in different positions and sizes. If the viewer scans this with his smartphone, a separate composition sounds for each code. The sound compositions interpret and comment on the current situation in 3 different ways: visionary fictional, classically cathartic, or purely scientific. Original voices of students of the KIT, Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, and the Musikhochschule Karlsruhe were used for this purpose.
No. I definitely do not think. I think it depends on the circumstances you are living in. If a car is necessary for you to that would be from A to B. That would be that would A to B. That would be from A to B. That would be get from A to B. From A to B. From A to B. B.
So far, so close. So far, so close.
To reach the climate goals, our CO2 emission must
To reach the climate goals,
drastically.
our CO2 emissions must be reduced drastically.
So far, so close.
The compositional polyphony silences any polarization in favor of the undisputed perception of a state of emergency and the call to each individual to act responsibly and self-determinedly. The light image gallery consists of 4 RAM image motifs of representative microorganisms and insects, as well as an oversized QR code which is placed behind the installation. The creatures are reproduced as classical portraits of a scanning electron microscope in a rectangular rod on strings, like on silken threads. Lined up one after the other, however, the hanging does not follow the usual pattern of, say, a gallery, but is more reminiscent of the arrangement of dominoes. The first portrait is given in the situation of toppling over, so that the eye of the viewer continues this process of kicking off in his mind's eye and triggers a chain reaction of toppling over. But the ropes on which the pictures hang stop the process and render it as a key moment in the sense of laokoon, a moment that is able to narrate the whole event from all sides. The given snapshot of the falling over shows the smallest creatures and insects in the form of oversized portraits, which for the first time vis-à-vis appear to us almost at eye level, expressing their equality as living beings. It looks as if they have already mutated into monstrous creatures through external influences and present their angry-looking likenesses in a vertical, lopsided position. What can be heard are insect sounds that have been highly magnified using a specially developed sound microscopy process, arranged into very unique compositions that together intone a haunting canon of one of the most important inhabitants of the earth. An unveiled rear view reveals technology and leaves open the question of its original size and equality. In this way, the aesthetic staging of monstrous insect portraits in the midst of a wire mesh cage takes up themes of both the technoid and the living, and poses fundamental questions about power, naturalness, and limits. Most forcefully, however, the principle of chain reaction is presented here as a central theme that, in connection with our intervention in nature, sets in motion connotations all its own. 5 objects of the collection art spaces of the JRC, Joint Research Center, bring us back to the earth ground of facts. They show us one of the prices for the extraction of energy to illuminate cities, for example. The barrel as a symbol of the storage of dangerous material is the starting point for a reflection and examination of a completely different side of the subject of energy, nuclear waste, which eludes any sustainability in the sense of recycling. To this day, nuclear waste can only be stored for eternity in barrels, and even the time window of a human lifetime is not nearly long enough for it to be completely returned to the true cycle. But currently, so-called floating or buried mini-reactors want to teach us something completely different, and so worldwide it is currently being weighed up which is the greater evil, nuclear energy or the consequences of climate change. Therefore, it seems all the more necessary to think outside the box, to reverse the astronautical gaze and move into the immediate vicinity of the issue. What could be more obvious than to focus directly on the repository of nuclear waste and to follow the reflections and impulses of renowned artists? In this sense, the exhibits on display were commissioned by the Joint Research Center. And as in the context of every thematic exhibition, the art of aesthetic reflection was used here as a means of communication in order to present complex issues in a perspective-free and non-judgmental way, and yet from as many sides as possible. Roberto Bani became known in the 80s for his sculptures combined with painting. With his work, he focuses on the seemingly endless chain of generations that manifest their existence building on and relying on the respective previous generation. In this way, he builds a monument to the principle of hope, which in the context of nuclear waste disposal is probably the only thing that remains for the common man and drives him, once again, to irrational actions that, if thought through to their conclusion, should never have been put into practice from the very beginning of their thought. The internationally awarded works of sculptor Raphael de Vittori Reitzel can be traced to Jerusalem. The title of this work is Program. A fine pink-colored mushroom figure rises here again like phoenix from the ashes, according to the Greek myth. But the creature can only emerge from these ashes in a lifelike form. The atomic forces also dissect the blueprints of DNA, giving free rein to mutation and creating life from scratch. The work in terracotta takes up the myth of infinite renewal emergent from destruction and interprets it as change. Peter Hyde is first and foremost a designer of international standing. His career is closely associated with Swatch and Alessi. In this work, money, art, and energy merge into a unique potential that, in its purest concentrated form, is capable of releasing groundbreaking forces. Skulls, however, refer to the eternal transience of all omnipotent fantasies and ideologies and conjure up the imminent downfall as well as the subsequent reinvention. For a common to all is an act of invention, and as quickly as they came, one might as well invent their disappearance and in this way allow a new thinking to germinate on the horizon. Liquid Water by Fabrizio Plessi has a special position in this exhibition, in that his large-scale installation Liquid Time from 1993 is symbolic for the development and image of the media art collection of the ZKM and has subsequently caused a worldwide sensation. Already in the 1980s, water became the material of his design by subordinating it in various ways to the form of space as well as to the movement of time. The barrel filled to the brim with water as the elixir of life refers to a general motto that, by equating reality and representation, marks the already reached end of a process and at the same time indicates the limitedness of a resource. The sculptor Paola Ravasio gives her work the title Germinal. Germination is a process that usually requires a place of rest to develop all the vital force. And indeed, in every sprouting cell, there is an incredible energy at work, capable of breaking up the earth and striving with all its strength towards life. Through the symbolic equation of a seedling with the atomic force, the question arises as to what the parallel is in its imagined continuation of development into a plant. Could the atomic force leave its resting place and take a shape out of itself, which proves to be just as equivalent and useful as our plants? In this way, we could continue with the Joint Research Center's reflection on tons and barrels, because we do not want to define an alternativeless either-or between climate catastrophe, digitalization, and nuclear power. After all, it is entire future generations that pay the price for each of these decisions, and Europe is currently close to the issues, but still far from uniform approaches to solutions. Thus, the astronautical view in Sabine Schäfer's work points not only to the European community, but also to the next larger groupings, such as that of the World Economic Forum, which uses complex navigation maps to show the public how, above all, the optimizing potential of digitalization in all areas of life is the unifying approach to solutions. But a completely different path, which the barrel intends here, could also be taken. It would be that of Diogenes, who spent his life in modesty and the greatest renunciation of consumption in a barrel, which famously served as his only dwelling. As a cosmopolitan and student of Socrates, he relied on common sense and preached self-sufficiency by limiting himself to basic needs. In the end, the meditation on barrels brings us closer to the idea of renunciation, which could be the common ground for the emergence or disappearance of the global problem situation. A renunciation, however, which everyone should prescribe self-determined before this far-sighted programmed intelligences take over for us.